Hello, I'm Chris with Portland State University's outdoor program. This video will cover the introduction to mountaineering. The term mountaineering implies that you have a goal or objective of summiting a technical peak. And a technical peak can be something that involves climbing rock, snow, or ice, or a combination of all three. In the video, I'm going to cover clothing, equipment, knots, and some rope techniques. This video is not all-inclusive and cannot be a substitute for hands-on education. Please seek out skilled mentorship and/or a certified guide. Enjoy. For clothing, I often like mid-layers, lots of gloves, puffies, and shells. And each one is kind of specific in how they're used. So I often like pretty durable leather palmed gloves for rope work and general movement. And then when I get colder or if I'm gonna stop, some nice puffy mittens to help keep my hands warm. And then a down or just a regular beanie, something that will go under my helmet. A neck gaiter, help keep me a little bit warmer. And if I start to get too warm, it's easy to pull off. Nice mid layer or base layer here, just for the upper. Soft shell or hard shell pants, whichever you prefer. A good mid layer, something that will kind of go in between, easy to shed, and also synthetic, that way it doesn't get too cold when I start sweating or if it gets wet. Nice big puffy layer if I get really cold. It also compresses into my backpack. A shell, keep all the snow off of me, help keep me dry. Good glacier sunglasses, that way I don't go blind. And then good sturdy boots with, often for me, a heel and toe welt for automatic crampons. And then at least calf high socks for me, what I prefer. The non-auto, it just fit around the boot and lace up. Not super aggressive, aluminum, lightweight. And then something a bit more aggressive, probably a bit too aggressive for typical mountaineering, but it's got the toe and heel bales, which are also considered the auto crampons. A lot more aggressive, also a lot heavier. These ones would typically be used for ice climbing. So if your objective is a bit more aggressive, these might be appropriate. But if you're going to be doing something lighter and faster, not super technical, these are probably a bit overkill. With axes, these ones are slightly more technical axes. I have one with a hammer and then one with an adze. Also good wrist leashes here so I don't lose them and slide as they slide down the mountain. Bit heavier, so if I was going to climb something a bit more vertical, this might be appropriate. If I'm not going to be doing any real ice climbing, I just need it for self-arrest, something lighter like this is probably a bit more appropriate. Almost half the weight that one of these are. I often like just one pole that's collapsible as well. Especially if I'm doing a lot of side angle stuff. That way I have this on my downhill side and an axe on my uphill side. Helps keep me a bit more stable on an angled slope. Moving on to other equipment and stuff that I carry with me either on my harness or in my bag. I often like to have a extra battery with me for my phone since I use it as my primary means to navigate. Then a reusable Ziploc bag for all my snacks. A compressible water bottle, usually at least 1 liter, if not more. One that can also be attached to a carabiner. And then sometimes also a hard bottle. If it's going to be really cold, I will actually also put a sleeve on my Nalgene so that way it doesn't freeze. I need a harness, a helmet, And then a headlamp. Usually I like these small ones that will fit easily into almost any pocket if I need to. A longer prusik. I also have a shorter prusik that I keep on my emergency rescue kit here. 3 extra non-lockers. Some cordelette. This is 5mm power cord, I believe. 120 centimeter length Dyneema sling. I've got one belay device, can also be used for rappelling, and a dedicated locker for it. I have another dedicated locker for my micro traction. 3 extra lockers that can be used for anchors or whatever else I need. If there's going to be ice expected on the route, I'll also usually bring 1, 2, possibly more if I'm going to do a lot more ice. Ice screws, a V-thread device, 1, 2, or maybe even 3 pickets sometimes. This could be dispersed throughout the group. Rope, of course, and I usually like the skinnier ropes for glacier travel and ice and whatever else I'm going to be using for the snow. And all of that should fit mostly on my harness except for these things right here. And then for everything that is not going on my harness or in my stomach, we'll often go into a bag, and depending on how long or how big the objective is, this bag will vary in size. This is just a 30 liter Arc'teryx bag. I like it because it's waterproof, and that way I don't have to throw on something on the outside of it to make it waterproof. This is a med kit. This is a bit bigger than what I would normally take. A bit more comprehensive, and if you do need one this size, it can be broken down and then separated into different kits. That way each person can have part of this bigger medical kit. And then also sometimes I'll bring some hand warmers. And if I need a bit of flotation because there's going to be a lot of soft snow, I might bring snowshoes or even skis for uphill and downhill travel. So whenever you're traveling on avalanche terrain, which is most mountains that have snow and glaciers, you want to have an avalanche beacon. And if you only have one avalanche beacon, it's not going to do you any good because you need 2 to find the other person that could possibly be buried. The other things that you need if you're going to carry a beacon is a probe and a shovel. Because if you find someone and you only have your hands to dig up the snow, they're going to pretty much suffocate before you get to them. So the first thing you want to do is make sure it's close to your base layers and not on your outer layers, and then close to your center of mass. Some newer pants and jackets actually have specific beacon pockets that have a lanyard to attach it to, so you don't need this harness that's around my chest right now. And when you use it, make sure it's the batteries in it are new and fresh, and that you know how to use it. This one's pretty simple. It just has an off and on switch. Turn it on, you hear some beeping, maybe some. Make sure the keypad actually lights up, and good to go. Now, if my partner here turns their beacon on, and then if say they are buried and I want to find them, I just need to start searching. And right now it's telling me that you are 2.8 meters away. So if I have a piece of cordelette that I want to join 2 ends together to make a closed loop, I can do an overhand knot, which is called a flat overhand if I want to join 2 ends together. And I can show you how to do that with this. So 2 ends, keep them together, twist, take my 2 ends, push through, make sure my tails are long enough, usually around 8 to 10 inches for a small cord like this. Stress each one, and I've closed my flat overhand. So if I want a more of a friction hitch to limit this moving around maybe an object, I can do a clove hitch. It has lots of different uses, and this is just one of them. So for the clove, I want to keep this kind of out off to the side. Bring one thumb in, have one strand on one side of my rope, the other strand on the back side of the rope. Then I want to pinch that rope in the middle, bring together, and then that's going to be where I cinch down on. So now I've got my loops, bring it through my carabiner, and then I can just cinch down to lock that in place. And now that's not going to move. So now that I've got the one side of my anchor set up, and I've closed my loop with my flat overhand and kept my knot out of the way with the clove hitch, now I want to connect the other side of my anchor so I have 2 points on my anchor. So I have the other side of my closed loop. I'll take it and I'll just pass it through the other side of my anchor. Pull it together and equalize these into one single point. So now I've equalized here in my anchor in my direction of pull. So now I want to do another overhand, but not a flat overhand. So I want to pull up enough slack here, bring it around, and then back through the hole that I've just created. Now I have my master point, and then I have what's called my shelf up here, which is another point that I can either belay off of or anchor myself into. So the next hitch I'm going to show you, as opposed to a locking hitch, which is what the clove was, this next hitch is called the Munter, and it slides. It can be used for lots of different ways. One of them is belaying, because it does actually slide. So you start the Munter much like the clove, where I'm going to flip in towards my strand, but instead of the clove where I'm going to flip back, I'm just going to bring this forward, and now I have my loop that I'm going to put through my carabiner. So I have a locking carabiner on my master point, and I'm going to put this Munter through just like that, make sure this locks, and now I've got something that I can belay off of and or also lower somebody on. So now if I am going to belay somebody up to me using a Munter, I want to mule it for some other means. I want to make sure that my load strand, this is my climber's strand, which is a load strand, and this is my brake strand coming to me. My hitch is on the load side. If I want to lock this off, when it is on the load side, I want to make sure that I bring my half bite over. So now the load strand is down. A bite on this side. Now I want to lock it off with what's called a mule. Slide it through. So I'm going to pull through several feet of slack. My brake strand, bring it around, so I'm trapping my load strand on my load strand. Take a bite, pass it through, and that will lock it into place. Several feet no longer move slack. And now I want to put an overhand beneath my mule. So now my load strand is locked, can't move, and I can go hands-free. So the next knot is just a overhand on a bite, and you can change that pretty easily into a figure 8 on a bite. The difference between the two is just one more half loop around, and I can demo that here. So I want a bite, which is what this is. Now, if I want a knot in my rope at this particular point, I'm going to do an overhand on a bite. So I'm just going to take this, flip it up, pass the end of my bite through, and pull. And now I have a knot on my rope that I can use for either an anchor or tying somebody into. So much like the overhand, I can also do a figure 8 on a bite, which is just one more half loop around. So I'll start the same way. I'll flip up. This would be an overhand, or I can twist it, then bring it through. Now I have a figure 8 on a bite. So this next knot is really just a stopper knot, and it's meant to be used with rope travel through glaciers. That will be addressed later in the video. This knot is what's called a very ugly, non-clean knot. That way it will catch on a crevasse lip, and it is specifically done that way. It combines the figure eight with an extra loop. So we'll start off and we'll do the figure eight again. So flip this, bring it around, make sure you have a very long tail. Now I have my two bottom strands here. I'm going to bring my long tail up through the two strands and then back around to the top and through the hole that we've created at the top of the figure eight. Pull that through, cinch down my strands, and now I have a very ugly, not very clean knot that will catch on a crevasse lip.
I will show 3 different techniques for walking on steep terrain with crampons. The first technique shown is the French technique, where you keep all of the teeth of the crampon engaged in the snow or ice. The second technique I'll show here is where you will kick steps using the side of the crampon. The last technique is where you will turn and go straight uphill using the front points of the crampon.
When you have an axe in your hand and you're going uphill or downhill, you want the axe, typically the adze is the best way, at least I believe that, on your uphill hand closest to your thumb. And then as you're going uphill, it's easier to maintain it acts as a third leg. And if I'm going to swap directions, I'll plant it, rotate, and swap to my uphill hand. That way it's always on my uphill hand and in a position that is ready for me to do self-arrest. So as I'm going downhill, I still have my uphill hand with the axe, the adze pointed with my thumb. If I have a slip going downhill, I can immediately go into self-arrest with my hands with the adze pointed up, opposite shoulder, and I can leverage with my opposite hand. It doesn't matter which way I'm pointed when I fall. I happen to fall on my butt. Start sliding. I can instantly rotate over and rotate up. You also want to dig your toes in, especially with crampons on. It will help to slow your speed and kick your butt off the snow.
So the next thing I'll show you is how to tie in into the rope with a figure eight follow through. So I'll start off initially with almost a full arm's length of rope. Got my end and I have my bite. I want typically a standardized, I'll start off with my tail on the right, bring it all the way around my bite and back to the front. Now I have my figure eight. And then the next step after I have my figure eight is to take my end, go through my hard points on my harness, bottom to top, pull it till my figure eight gets close to my belay loop, and then I want to retrace this through. Starting on the inside, pull my slack through, and then keep following my figure eight all the way around. Making sure I have at least 7 to 8 inches of tail, which I do, and then cinching everything down. So now that I'm tied in and I don't want to have 200 feet of rope out, I want to coil it, that way it can be easily used if I need it. So I'm going to show you how to kiwi coil the rope. So I want to start off with my left thumb towards me, close to my knot, thumb down, hand out, and I'm going to go around my neck, bring it back down around to my hand. And I want to make sure I have good posture when I do this, that way my coils aren't too short or too long. As I do it, I'm going to keep going around as much as I need until I get the right amount of rope in between myself and my partner. Once I have that done, I can slide this arm through, take my end here. A bite is going to go through my belay loop, then through my coils. And then I have my strand that goes to my other partner, and I can just tie this off with an overhand. Cinch this down. And then, important, is to actually cinch the coils themselves down. Now, if I'm going to be traveling on a rope team, the next thing I can do is put an overhand on a bight here that will take the load in case they happen to fall into a crevasse. I want to use a locker, and then just back to my harness. So if I want to undo my coils, it's important to not just take them off and dump them, because then I'll have a rat's nest, and it will be extremely difficult to sit there and deal with all of these coils that are interlinked with one another. So it's best if you just take them off one at a time until you get the rope that you need, and then stop. Another way to quickly use your rope and not have it coiled on your body is to keep it in your backpack. The way I want to do that is to start with the very end of my rope, or if I don't have anybody tied into it, I can also put the middle of the rope, which may be better if I'm not traveling on glaciated terrain where there's crevasses. If I want to do that, I can start with the end and shove it into the bottom of my bag and just keep stacking on top of it. So now the rope is stacked in my bag. I have the end here. I'm still tied in because I don't need to untie. I've got it nice and tight in there. Next thing I can do is put another overhand on a bight here. That way it keeps it up and out of the way. Non-locker, and just someplace where it's easy to access.
So if you're tying in for going over a glacier and you want to have a rope team, I'll show right now a rope team of 2. And this could be amended later to just have somebody in the middle if needed. So I usually like to do one arm's length where the person on the end is going to tie in. I'll just do a quick overhand there. And then from there, so my arm span is usually around 5 feet. I'll do 1, 2, and I'll tie a big knot. This is a stopper knot. So it's going to come around, pull through, then it goes through.
Do it to the side. Yeah, thank you.
It goes through and back through that hole I left. And then pull tight. Nice, ugly knot. You don't want any smooth edges because this is the knot that will catch in the edge of the crevasse. So that was 2 from my end. So maybe 1, 2 again. Same knot. Back through. Go back through these strands and back through the hole. And then 1, 2. And this is where I will tie in. Now I'm tied in. My other climber goes on the farther end of this rope. So yeah, this is going to be a T-trench with an ice axe for an anchor. First I want my direction of pull is that way, so mark out a line that is perpendicular to it, and then start chopping through the ice. Start this side first. The next thing I want is where my cable is going to come out. Create a line, my direction of pull. doesn't pull the anchor out. You don't want it wide, because the wider it is, the more you're gonna essentially weaken your front edge here, which is the part that holds the pressure. So I have my T-trench, and now I have my axe I'm gonna place in there, and I want my material that's gonna come out of it. So I have just a double length sling. I'm gonna put a clove hitch on this, so that way it keeps in place. Put it about in the middle, cinch it down, and then it goes into the T-trench. Far out as I can get it. It's nice and stable. Give this a pull, and then I can fill from the back side to pack this in, so that way it's even stronger if there's even any snow to fill in. It also helps to keep it from pulling out of your trench. So I have a single T-trench anchor, and then I'm going to set up a line off of that up over the edge. So I do that with a locking carabiner. It doesn't need to be a big one, it can be a small one. And then from there, just do an overhand on the bite. I got my bite. Have a long enough tail. Nice, clean, dressed knot. Clip in my locker. And lock. So now I at least have one fixed line. And stay below your anchor. Otherwise, you don't want to pull your anchor up and out of the snow. So now that I have at least one anchor, and I have a fixed line if I needed to check out the edge, and I'm sure that that one anchor is solid. If I didn't think it was completely solid, I would back it up with another one. And now I can go to the edge. Step on my rope too much. Then I have a picket to back up my T-trench anchor, which you can also turn this into a T-trench as well by just turning it sideways. For this scenario, we'll actually just pound it in, which is why you actually have these reinforced grommets up top with steel versus aluminum, so that way you don't bend the shit out of it. And then a cable that's attached to it. You can find pickets that don't have cables attached to it, but this one I like, and I usually carry with me. It's also nice when you're pounding and pickets in to have an axe that has a hammerhead on it versus an adze, which is good for cutting in T-trenches, but not so good for pounding and pickets.
Placing the picket as my second anchor point, I want it separated by approximately 3 to 4 feet horizontally and 3 to 4 feet up or down the mountain. If I want to place this vertically, I want the V opening faced downhill and the cable pointed in the direction of the load. I also want this picket placed at approximately 15-degree angle from the surface. Then using the hammer on my axe, I want to pound the picket down until the top is close to the surface of the snow. And just like on my other anchor point, I want to cut a path for the cable. If you need a little assistance in seating the cable, you can clip a carabiner to the end and then clip that to your axe and give a few firm pulls. Be sure not to stab yourself in the leg while doing this. Now we have our second anchor point, and next we need to connect and equalize the 2 points.
So now I have my original T-anchor, a picket, and then I have 2 locking carabiners on each one, and I want my 8mm cord to equalize between the 2 of them for my anchor. So I like to have an adjustable side. So I already have an overhand on a bite on that side, which means it's not adjustable. So I'll do a clove on this side. Lock and place. And then over here, I want a nice beefy anchor master point. So I can put a lot of stuff on and in my direction of pull, which is right here. And I'm going to do BHK, big honking knot. Now, got my big knot and my master point. In order to lock off my Munter, I want to do the mule overhand. So I have my brake strand. I'm going to create a loop on the other side, a loop on this side. Slide it through and pull, usually several feet. Cinch that into place, and then do an overhand on below it. And now it's locked, and this can no longer be lowered until you take that Munter mule overhand back out. So for lowering, especially here on an alpine or glacier, I like to lower on a Munter hitch versus a plate. So I have it backed up with a auto block on the Munter going back down to my person I'm lowering. So in order to do this, make sure you just maintain that, and there'll be a little pop initially, especially if my climber is actually leaning back. There we go. And then nice and smooth and easy, not going too fast, until they get to where they need to go, where they're safe.
That concludes the introduction to mountaineering. This video is not intended to be a substitute for formal education. Please do not overestimate your skills and underestimate the mountains. Be careful. If you have any questions or comments, please let us know.